Hi, I'm All4Dude3, and this is my Uproot tutorial. So first thing about these guys is how they move. So the joystick, you just use the joystick to move. If you're standing still, you'll notice beginning to move, the Uproot has to accelerate. But once you get to this maximum speed, the Uproot will stay at this speed no matter how fast you change your direction, and that's pretty useful. So you don't have to go through this slower walking speed ever. The second thing is stretching. So I like to use the B button to stretch upwards. While you're holding it, the Uproot will stretch, and if you let go at any point, the Uproot will do a little hop. So if you're standing on the ground and you just tap the B button, it's kind of like the Uproot is jumping. But really, the Uproot does this jump from any height. You can also use the Y button, the A button, or the X button. Any of the face buttons all make you stretch. And also shaking the controller. So if you shake the controller, the Uproot will stretch higher and faster. So this is the maximum height when you hold a button down, and if you shake, the Uproot will go a little bit higher. And if you keep shaking, you'll stay at that height, in theory. You can also, while I'm holding the B button right now, if I also press another button, the Uproot will go up to this higher height. And if I repeatedly press that button, the Uproot will stay at this height for as long as I want. If you want to stretch upwards quickly, but then you want to jump, so let's say I only want to stretch up a little bit of a distance, like this much, and then I want to do a jump. I can just hold the B button until I get here and let go, or I can start shaking the controller and then tap the B button to jump. Then you'll get the faster stretch speed, but then you'll be able to stop stretching whenever you want. If I start shaking and immediately hold the B button, I will not be moving faster upwards anymore. So as soon as you start holding a button, the Uproot will stretch slower. So that's important to know if you're trying to be optimal and you just want to stretch the Uproot to its highest height as fast as possible and stay there. For instance, in the torque drift fight, when you're hitting torque drift from the bottom, you don't want to start shaking and then hold B immediately. You want to shake until he's up there, and then you can start holding B to make sure you don't stop stretching. Now for the fun part, jumping. So if you're moving, and by default, the Uproot will jump at that same speed that you're moving at, this fixed like maximum speed. And so to do a little jump test, let's jump from the edge of these leaves here to the left. I don't quite make it over all of these leaves, but I make it pretty far. There are two ways to move faster as the Uproot. One of them makes your jumps bigger, and one of them makes your landings faster. So every time you jump, the Uproot will pause for a moment on the ground. And also, your jumps are a fixed kind of distance. So first, let's talk about the big jumps. If the Uproot ever walks off an edge and is midair, airborne for any reason, and you start holding the stretch button, the next time the Uproot's feet touch the ground, at that moment you will gain these bigger jumps. So, using this ledge, we can walk off, start stretching, and then once his feet hit the ground below, I can jump and I will have these big jumps. So now I have them, and let's do a little jump test on these leaves. You go way farther. I can completely clear these leaves. And you also see right at the beginning, you kind of accelerate to this faster speed midair. So that's nice. This power-up, so-called, the Uproot will maintain this property as long as every time you are pressing a stretch button, you are holding a direction on the control stick. So if I stop moving like this doesn't affect it. I still jump pretty far, the same distance. But if I start stretching and I let go of the control stick, even if I start holding it again, I now no longer jump far. So I jump the same shorter distance. And so let's get this back again. So now I have it. So, and let's say I stop moving, everything's fine. If I want to start stretching, I better start holding a direction on the control stick before. And now I will maintain these big jumps. So that's how you keep the big jumps. Is anytime you're in the stretch animation, you have to be holding a direction on the control stick. Now for the next sort of power-up, the second one, where you land faster. This happens if you just walk off of a ledge and land after not falling for too long. So this ledge actually happens to be a great distance, where if I just walk off, you'll see he landed pretty quickly, but more importantly, in general, he lands quickly now. So now I can jump without worrying about slowing down when I land. And this one works kind of the opposite of the other one. If you're allowed to not move while you're stretching, but anytime you're on the ground, as long as you're holding a direction, you will keep it. So if I ever stop holding a direction and start moving again, I will now have lost that no landing lag buff. So let's just get it again real quick. And you can see now I have the short jumps, but when I land, it's fast. So you can get both of these, you can combine them by getting one and then the other. Doesn't matter which order you get them in, but now I jump far and I land fast. And so this is the optimal uproot right here. And combining the two restrictions on when you can keep both power-ups, you basically have to always hold the control stick in some direction. The only time you're allowed to go neutral is when you're midair and not stretching. But you have to start holding a direction before you land. So really, it's just all the time. And the best way to do that is to just spin in a circle. And also notice while you're stretching, the uproot walks slower, so that can be helpful. You don't have to spin really fast on the ground. You can start stretching and you don't have to spin as fast to stay in the same spot. So now we know how to get these fast uproot properties by using a ledge like this. But in a speed run, we won't have this ledge. So how can we get these uproot power-ups quickly and without going too far out of our way? Well, the key is the uproot spawner. And so I'm going to head down to this area where we have uproot spawners and flat ground. So the best way to get fast landings in a speedrun is to get an insta-capture on the uproot, which is easiest if you get it right as they're spawning. So what happens is Cappy knocks the hat off of the uproot, which bounces the uproot upwards. And then Cappy will capture the uproot, and now you're airborne. And so you're just high enough off the ground that when you land, as long as you're holding a direction on the control stick, you will get the fast landings. So that's probably the easiest way to get fast landings in a speedrun, but sometimes it just doesn't work out nicely. Sometimes the uproot spawns before you get there, you don't get an insta-capture on it, whatever happens, and your uproot's moving slowly. Well, what can you do? It is possible, for instance, and it's used in the torque drift fight, for example, you can still get fast landings even if you didn't start with them by doing a jump and landing on the back edge of the downward slope of the spawner. So if I'm moving this direction, I want to land on this part of the spawner, going away from the center of the spawner to go downhill. And so this can be a little bit difficult. In the torque drift fight, there are setups to do it. And again, you will recognize that you got it if you feel a little bit of a slight rumble when the uproot walks from the spawner to the normal ground. And that can give you a hint that you got it. So right there, I just got it. And now there it is. To get big jumps as the uproot using the spawner, the best way is to walk across the spawner, and then when you're on the downward slope, begin to stretch, just as you're walking onto the normal ground. And so I think the reason why this works will help understand how to do it correctly. So imagine this railing I'm on is a tiny stair step in the edge of the slope of the spawner. So the slope, imagine it as a bunch of tiny steps. And I'm walking from this bottom step onto the orange ground, which is the orange ground, next to the spawner. So when you walk off, the uproot will kind of go airborne for an instant. And if you begin to stretch at that point, then his feet will touch the orange ground, and now you will have the big jumps. A problem I see when people try and get big jumps off the spawner is that they will tap the button for an instant, and that will not give you it. It technically can, but your chances are much lower because you need the uproot's feet to touch the orange ground when you do this. So if you just tap, the uproot's feet never get a chance to hit the ground, and you do not get the big jumps. But if you hold the button until you're sure the uproot's feet will have touched the orange ground, then you will get it much more often. So focus on the start of the press, right as you're starting to walk down the slope, instead of when you let go. Hold it until you're sure the uproot is standing on the normal ground again. So in this case, it just makes it so much more consistent. But tapping will not necessarily give you the big jumps that you want. You might get a single big jump when you do it, but that doesn't mean you get it in general. That single big jump is happening because when you jump in, when you're in the air, it is a bigger jump, but you won't get the bigger jumps in general unless the uproot's feet touch the ground. So that is it for my uproot tutorial. There are other ways to get these speeds and stuff and to lose them, but it all gets really specific to the situation. So I'm going to leave it there.